advisor to the Center for American Progress, as a regular consultant to the W.K. Kellogg Foundation on Family, Economic Security, and Civic Engagement, and as a senior strategist for Green for All. So I think she's been quite busy. And Melissa is going to come up now and just share some of her thoughts with us today.
Can you hear me? Good evening. Come on, I flew out from DC this morning. I'm on a red eye tonight. Let me try one more time. Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, great. So I'm 45 years old. I don't have a PowerPoint. I don't have Prezi. If you'd asked me how to spell it, I would have failed the spelling bee, but I know my students use it. So I basically had all these talking points, but I've thrown them to the window. I've thrown them out the window. And partly because I have been blown away and so impressed by the young ladies that I have seen. I have 6 kids, and I have been texting them saying, I wish you were here. No, I really wish you were here, so you can see what you should be doing instead of what you're doing. Particularly my 6-year-old twin girls who are just so into the American Girl doll, which does nothing, doesn't talk, doesn't move, and at that price point, it should wake me up. It should find me volunteer activities, and it should give me a return on investment that it's not sleeping outside, but it doesn't. So really what I want to do is probably less talk about a social entrepreneur or being an entrepreneur, but really just probably have a conversation more so with the young ladies. I have 6 children, so that's why I'm here, and they're not. They range in age from 6 years old to 23 years old. And I have to say that it is mostly with the 6-year-old twins that this whole concept of coding I've become obsessed with. Because the only thing I know how to code is COBOL. And most of you, you're like, what the heck is it? See, exactly, like those are my people, that's my generation. And I know a little bit about Dreamweaver, which is just like totally obsolete. So I'm about to be extinct myself. But I say that because, you know, coming up, when the first time I actually sat down at a computer course was at Bloomfield Community College, and I took the course with my mom. I am like many of you, I think, in some ways. I was a straight-A student. I went to private school. I had to wear those funky uniforms. I thought it was, I didn't get the message that I was supposed to wear black and white. I'm sorry. I did like the girls with the colored jeans though, but I can't fit in those. But I didn't come from a privileged background. I was given those resources, but I was a single parent household. My father died from a heart attack when I was 3 months old. My mom worked multiple jobs. She never graduated from college. She cleaned houses on the weekends. She was a comptroller during the week. But she was intent on me doing better than she did. And I don't know all of your parents, but I can see that they are intent on you doing better than they did. And that's an extreme privilege. It's also an extreme opportunity, but it's also a challenge and a burden that you have to come to terms with. And I remember her saying, let's go to college. I'm going, I am 9 years old. The last thing I want to do is be seen with you, and then you want me to go to a college campus. But I remember sitting in the class, and we were the only 2 women there. And we were also the only people of color, any color, in the entire room. And it was painful because I'm going, what is this? How's this going to be helpful? But I went through the process anyway, and so for, I think it was like 8 weeks, I took this COBOL class, never used it again. But what I learned there, though, was the significance of A, trying something different and taking risks, B, recognizing that those things that you were often told not to do are probably the things you should be doing in an educational, academic context, not a Friday night context. And then I also learned, though, that if that opportunity, if my mom had not worked at Bloomfield College as a comptroller, that opportunity would never have been provided to me. And I was going to private school. And so the reality is there is so much in this world that so many people do not have access to, that we then have the opportunity of access to, so it then creates a sense of privilege, but also this sense of responsibility. And so, as someone who's done a whole bunch of businesses, I could stand here and say, so here's how you make a pitch to VCs, or here's how you sell a company, or here's how you start a not-for-profit. But the reality is I recognize that usually I stand between this audience and a happy hour. That's not going to happen with this group. But I stand between you and finding out who gets some money. So I know you guys want to run me over. But I realize that, you know, this is a smart group. And so the opportunities that you already know in terms of how to grow your business and scale your business already exist within your ecosystem, which is a privilege that a lot of people don't have. But you know that the way to be socially responsible and to be able to do good is you can be part of your business mission or DNA, like a Tom Shoes. It can be part of your business process, like a Whole Foods or Honest Tea. Or it can be part of the outcomes of your business success when you create a foundation. Or you build it in that a piece of every dollar earned goes and gives away like Peace Cosmetics. There's tons of information out there, particularly now for women, because they catch on, right? They now know that if women do well, GDP of countries do well. Duh. There's a recent study that I just went to this foundation and endowment conference in Huntington Beach, California. And I have to say the room was maybe double the size of people. Don't take this personally, but 95% of the room were white men in gray suits with white shirts and red ties. And then there were a few people like me. And they talked about a study that said that when you put a woman on your board of directors of a company, its earnings increase within the first year of service. The challenge was, and the good thing was, it was a white guy that said this to the audience, but then when he said to them, who will now go get a woman, no one raised their hand. I was like, okay, at least for profit, go fake it. But they did, because there's such a fear, and there's a recognition that there's a power that oftentimes cannot be controlled. We know that women businesses are 15% more likely to be profitable than men. We know that we have spending power of $20 trillion that's going to almost double in the next 5 years. And we know that there's tons of programs, whether you're the SBA, the IFC, or even many of these retail shops, they're totally catering to women. And so this is our moment and our opportunity. And the question I put to you is, what are you going to do with it? And the good thing is that 600 girls in 19 countries have already started to figure out what to do with that. And so again, I really commend you all, and no matter who wins, in terms of how far you've gotten. What I do want to talk to you about, though, is the things that you're probably not going to learn, or that you will forget along the way. And what I realize is that as somebody who was like you all, straight-A student, successful, all that good stuff, partly because I did not want to get in trouble. I didn't have a mobile phone, but I didn't want to lose my TV privileges. I didn't want to give up my 8-track. You laugh, but that's what it was. I had black and white TV or the 8-track, that was it. And we had the rabbit ears you had to spin around, and you knew nothing about that. But the reality is that no matter how successful you are right now, the plight of women, no matter how much focus they give on it, will always remain challenging. We are one of the most vulnerable populations where our confidence, our courage, and our capacity is always questioned, are always at risk. And so there's a few things that I want to share with you, because I'm happy to talk to you about a business plan and how to get it funded. I can somewhat talk to you about how to get an app sold. But what's most important is probably the things that your parents are trying to tell you that you're not paying attention to. So as a parent, allow me, as not being your particular parent, give you some of these things. The first thing that I would say is to make sure, and I say this, well, I am, and I watched some of you respond to the questions, you are very confident. Very confident. But don't lose that. And there's a difference between confidence and being obnoxious. There's a difference between confidence but not having humility. And the reason that I say confidence is because you happen to be right now in an ecosystem where people are supportive of you. But let me rest assured, for those of us who are a little bit older, that may not always happen. I graduated from Georgetown. Georgetown was the only school I applied to. I was a finance major. There were only 2 women that were finance majors and only 2 people that were people of color in that group. There were thousands of kids that went to Georgetown, and that was it. And I remember I started a business, and it was a financial services company, and I went to the SBA. It's improved since then. But the SBA, for those who aren't from the United States, is technically the organization that's supposed to help small businesses get moving. They've come a long way. But back in 1990, when I went, I gave them my business plan, and they said to me, well, this is a wonderful, well-written plan. You are so articulate. I said, well, thanks. That's what my $6,000 a year education at Georgetown just got me. They said, but this is not going to be successful. I said, what are you talking about? I already have clients. I just need a growth loan. It's not going to be successful. I said, why not? They said, well, 1, because you're 22. I was like, okay, I'm not really buying that. They said, 2, because you're in debt. I was like, well, that is true. I just went to Georgetown for 4 years, so I technically am in debt. But 3, you're a woman and you're African American, and there are no successful women or people of color in finance. Take out the finance, replace tech, it still happens today. No matter how many success stories we have had, people will still tell you no. And so it's important to be confident in a way that allows you to exercise your power, but not run people over. It's important to be confident and not let people tell you no, so that when you open that door, it doesn't close behind you and you're the only one or the one, but it stays open for other people that are going to come through that door with you. And that's huge, because nobody taught me that. Because when I sold my first company, I was like, woohoo, yep, I am, I'm it, I'm the one. But the reality is that we're going to hit tons of bumps in the road, and we're all going to make mistakes, and we're all going to fall flat on our face. So it is the confidence that allows us to continue to move forward, recognizing it's not just about us, but it's about those who have come before us and those who came after us. That's what being confident is, not just for yourself, but for the entire community that you choose to represent. The second thing I would say, and again, this group has certainly not lost this tonight, is to be heard. But to be heard in a way that people are listening and not just hearing you. I would also say it's important to know your numbers, and it's important to know how to have fun. And I'm going to put all those together for you. I had the pleasure, and again, this is really going to date myself, to start an organization called the Woodhull Institute for Ethical Leadership with Naomi Wolf and Erica Jung and a bunch of other young women. And the point of this was that we recognized why certain people were being successful was not just their financial capital, but their social capital. It was not just how much money they had, but who they knew. And we recognized that oftentimes when women enter a room, they're not noticed. They're just totally overlooked, unless there's some immediate quid pro quo. And so we created this program where we actually take women, still to this day, we probably served over 10,000 women so far, we take them outside to no man's land, New York City, where your cell phones will not work. I can tell you that right now. And we focus for an entire week and an entire week on making sure that women have the skills to be successful. But not the skills that you're learning in these wonderful high schools that you're going to, and not the skills you're going to learn in college. We teach you how to find your voice, and not just for a powerful presentation that you just gave to some pretty powerful judges, but how to find your voice in intimate conversations with one, all the way up to conversations with hundreds. We have you practice talking about things you know, because you can talk about what you know. But then we say you have 30 minutes to talk about something you don't know. And that's where we struggle. And the reality is that we are all lifelong learners. There's going to be so many things that we don't know that we have to be able to figure out how do we find our voice even when we're feeling intimidated. The other thing that we do is that we realize there's numbers. And it's so funny because coding right now scares the heck out of me. But I love numbers. And when I decided to go to college, I was like, why are you going to major in finance? I said, because 2 + 2 is always 4. That psychology stuff is going to change. History's certainly going to change. Because people are going to make it up as they go along. I want something that I know I can pass, and 2 + 2 is always 4. But the reality is that much like science, technology, engineering, and math, it's not something that people talk about with their young girls. And of the 6 kids we have 4 girls. And we are constantly talking about numbers. And we put it with the budget that's related to their allowance, that's related to their clothes. It's amazing how they get it all of a sudden. But what we realize, though, particularly for folks who are a little bit older than you, is that it's oftentimes been a very traumatic experience in people's lives around money. For mine, it was not having it. It was standing in line at a grocery store and watching my mom try to figure out how many food stamps it was going to take so we could actually get all the food for that week. The reality is that for those of us who didn't grow up in places of privilege, having money, getting money is extremely traumatic and extremely stressful. And one of the things that we realize is it's important to get people to be comfortable with money. Whether you have $1 or $1 million, how to get comfortable with that. And so we could spend hours talking about what is your relationship to money. And that's a switch, because you've been talking about, how much VC money am I going to get? What's my ROI? I'm going to make $250,000 in 5 years. That's wonderful. But the reality is you've got to understand that money is a means, not an end. And you really have to be comfortable with having that kind of power. And so there was a woman named Dr. Robin Stern, who actually teaches at Columbia University. And it was this whole session was psychology of money. And it was amazing to talk to people who had none, to trust fund babies who were traumatized by the concept and the responsibility of money. And as entrepreneurs already on your way, when somebody offers you $5 million, you gotta get comfortable with that. Particularly if it's not really enough of what you need. I find that women who I have invested in oftentimes don't ask for the amount of money they really need, and are oftentimes afraid to ask for more, because they are not comfortable with the value of themselves. But the value of themselves should not be defined by money. It should be defined by your confidence, your courage, your charisma, and that's extremely important because some of those things are just completely priceless. The other thing that we did at Woodhull, which was totally my idea, was that the reality is that it's not just about what you know, but it is about who you know and where you know them from. And again, many of you, I know some of the schools, but not all the schools, already have a wonderful Rolodex or social capital or LinkedIn connections already. But the reality is there's still an art in business that is taken care of on a golf course. And we taught these women how to play golf. Because what better way to negotiate a deal over 4 hours, 18 holes, some beers on the back nine, not for you just yet, to be able to recognize that spending time with people, not texting them, not using an app, not Skyping with them, is extremely important. And so the young ladies would get frustrated. Well, I don't know how to play golf. I don't want to play golf. This is not environmentally correct. This is 4 hours out of my time. But the reality is it wasn't about playing golf. It was just about being comfortable in the presence of others. And I have to say, in a household of kids between 6 and 23, between not being able to write beyond 140 characters, but not being comfortable in the presence of others. Because we spend so much time in technology making it as short as possible, as quick as possible, that the idea of being able to slow down and really form authentic relationships with other people. And the key nowadays is not just forming authentic relationships with people who look like you, who talk like you, who happen to be in the same school as you, but to really forming authentic relationships that challenge you, of people that are completely different than you. Because nowadays you can go from being local to global in 5 seconds. Where's the Boston group? Who's the group from Boston? I actually understood when you said Boston Strong, but that's because I'm from the East Coast. But when you think about Boston Strong, it's a shirt. It's blue, and it has yellow letters, at least that's what I saw this morning, Boston Strong. Now for those of you who know, Boston is suffering from a major tragedy. They have sold over, like, I think 100,000 shirts all over the world. They went in like less than 30 days. They've made over $800,000, and all the money is actually going back to charity. The ability for you to scale beyond one's imagination is amazing because of technology. But that's how you get those relationships. How you keep those relationships is actually being able to be in conversation with people and to have real, authentic relationships. The other thing that I would say that's important is to be able to know and accept the fact that you're going to make mistakes. I had to edit that because I was